Big dog
Okay.
and not wet mouse.
We're starting, so go ahead, Mom.
Okay, this is a Zoom meeting about the First Church history trip we took years ago. Does anybody remember the year?
1991.
Okay. Um, I'll start it from my part. I got what I considered a prompting to take my children on a church history trip to help them strengthen their testimonies and know of their heritage. And I asked Doug and Audrey if they wanted to go, and they planned and prepared for the whole thing, and all I did was give them my share of the money, and that was before the internet. Audrey planned the whole trip using AAA with maps. She had everything planned and arranged, what campgrounds we were going to stay at, and they bought a travel trailer that folded down, and she had it packed with food and all of the meals planned and all of the food prepared for it. And we sailed clear to Palmyra and saw the pageant. We met Willis there. We had a couple of cars. We had Doug and Audrey's station wagon, and then Kim and Marcy's Astro van. And there was Doug and Audrey's family, and most of my kids. Bernie didn't go, and Sean didn't go, Lisa didn't go, Justin didn't go. Justin was probably on his mission, wasn't he?
No.
Oh, okay. And Jeanette Johnson went, Brandon Andrus went. And who else? Was there anybody else that weren't my kids or Doug's? Oh yeah, Nicole. Okay. All right. And for me, it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. We, on the way back, we stopped in Atlanta. Was it Atlanta?
Atlantic City.
Oh, Atlantic City. Thank you. And then we stopped in New Jersey and saw Lisa. She and John were living back there with John's mother. And so that's a little bit of the background of it. And now let's those of you who were on the trip tell about your memories. I'm looking at the screen right now, and I can see Doug, Willis, Amber, and Kathy. Kathy, do you want to start with your memories?
I do remember having the two cars and the families going, and I remember that in the cars it was nice that there were two, because after so many hours with certain people, it was nice to get out and switch cars and have a break. I remember stopping at all of those KOAs, and it was fun to have a little to camp. That there was a restroom and usually a swimming pool. That was fun. I remember staying at the Nauvoo house and thinking, this place is amazing. I don't know how Audrey found out about this, but that was a really cool experience. But yeah, I mean, like before we started recording, people talking about the music, there was a lot of Dolly Parton and Ray Stevens, and I remember Tim listening to his own MC Hammer. That's just the travel stuff, but I don't know if I want to be the first one to talk about the whole trip. Like, We'll talk about certain events or something and then chime in.
The MC Hammer was Anjanette Johnson, and I was her sidekick because no one else would hang out with me.
I do remember that we got CD radios so that we could communicate back and forth between the two cars. But we would get on the same channel and then we'd talk to truckers. And that was really interesting. I thought we would ask them questions about the crops and the scenery and so on like that. That was fun.
So while we're on the topic of music, I was introduced to country. Joseph would have us listen to that song about the truck drivers named Rubber Duck or whatever, the convoy song. 'Cause everyone wanted to be truckers because we were talking to truckers. And it was the first time in my life I ever heard of Phantom of the Opera. And Dawn was, if you rode in the blue station wagon with Doug and Audrey, I think odds were good you'd listen to Phantom of the Opera. So that was the first time I ever heard of that. And first time I ever heard Dolly Parton. And I think that's what started the 4-year country music phase I went through. I think it started on that trip. They got Joseph and Guy down to Ruth and Kathy and Jess that all influenced me. And before you know it, I liked country. It took me a little while to snap out of it.
I'd like to have you kids remind us of how old each of you was when you were on that trip. Do you hear me?
Yeah, barely. I know that I was
Bring it on.
I know I was 12 when we went.
Oh. Okay, so some of you chime in and tell us the highlight of your trip.
You call on people, Louise.
Well, should we
Mom-
get, I think we should have Doug and Audrey tell us kind of their perspective and their
Okay,
their part of planning and stuff.
And
yeah.
and then I would like us to go through the events and say, okay, whoever wants to say something about Palmyra, say that. Whoever wants to talk about Liberty Jail, say that. So we can kind of go through.
Okay, I will start. When I heard about the trip, I was excited about going, interested in going. I think I might have bought the travel trailer, but Audrey did all the planning and she did quite a bit of work planning it. Some of the events along the way, I enjoyed hearing the truckers conversation. When we got in Nebraska, my car had some kind of a mechanical difficulty, something to do with the cooling. I don't know, it was a fan belt or something. The car would run, but it wasn't safe. So we took it into a car dealership in Ogallala, Nebraska. It's the first time I'd ever seen a woman mechanic, and she was actually the shop foreman. She was the one that I dealt with. She did it very efficiently and very good. When I went in there, she said, okay, we'll take you right in. We'll take care of it. I suppose we were in the shop a couple hours, as I recall, but it wasn't long before I realized the scene that the people at the shop and the showroom of the dealership, here was a car come in with Utah license plates, a man with 2 women and about 30 kids. And Uh,
Not quite that many.
Close.
And looking like we'd never been in society before.
Yeah, never been to town before. This is the first time we've gone to town.
It's lucky they didn't see a trailer loaded full of kids.
Can I tell you, Doug? Can I tell you my version of that?
Yeah,
Yes.
It was hot outside. We were all drinking out of the same jug of water that had floaties in it. So Heather went inside that showroom, took the TV remote, and started watching some kind of soap opera or thriller movie. And the showroom people did not like us in there. And they kind of urged us to leave. And Heather said, the sooner that you fix our car, the sooner we're out of here. And we all sat and parked there. And boy, it wasn't very much longer. They had that car fixed and done.
I remember the show was it was a thriller. It was like almost a horror movie, and all the kids are sitting around watching it.
It was not appropriate for me to be watching because I still think about it and I still do not like it. It was like some guy like cryogenically frozen, woke like his face, like I literally had nightmares. No, thank you. But didn't they offer us a couple vans to go down by to the lake or the river? And we're like, no, we're good. Well,
They wanted us gone, and Heather told them the sooner you fix our car, the sooner we'll leave.
I know I ducked out and went over the laundromat across the street.
it was
Lost
the
some clothes.
first day. Why were your clothes so dirty?
I don't know. I found some that needed washed. And Dawn and I went for a walk around the streets. And I remember they gave you popsicles or ice cream bars or something. But I do remember them saying, I think you'd like to go to the beach.
They're trying to figure out ways to get us out of that dealership. So they were helping us, volunteering to give us vans and telling us where to go.
Yeah.
As far as the church history sites, one of the memories that I have, the Hill Cumorah pageant, as we were going into that, the anti-people were there trying to make their points and trying to contend with people trying to straighten them out and getting them on the right track. And I remember visiting with them, communicating with them, interacting with them, and Kim's daughter, Nicole. One of the highlights of that thing was, to me, hear her defending her faith and getting engaged with them. And that was sure interesting and pleasant for me. I will let somebody else. Audrey, do you have any comments?
I have so many memories and comments, I can't think of them all. I don't know if I have so many comments, but I have a lot of memories. I remember packing that,
Audrey, we could hear you last time, but we can't now. Move just a little closer to Doug.
Maybe is your hand covering the mic on your computer or something? The
I
speaker?
don't know. Where's the mic on this
We
computer? I
can-
can't even see it.
We can hear you now. It's good
Okay.
now.
I have lots of memories. I remember packing that pop-up trailer with lots of foods, and I remember Louise cooking spaghetti in it. And I remember that Brandon seemed to be the one that was around when some work needed to be done around wherever we were camping. And that he said, how come he's the only one that had to help? Everybody else would scatter about that time when it was time to pack up or get set up. I remember as far as truckers go, two things. I can't remember if we were around Chicago or where, and a trucker trying to guide me. I was driving through the maze to get wherever we needed to go. And I did not enjoy driving through that, especially hauling a trailer behind us. And I remember coming to a rest stop. Joseph, I think, had made a deal with a trucker that he wanted to see the inside of his cab. And the trucker agreed to that. Maybe I don't know all the details of what that agreement was, but then when we stopped and that trucker got out of his car and all these kids piled out of our cars and started toward him, that trucker's eyes got huge, and I don't think he was expecting that. I'm not sure what he was expecting. I love the sights. I love the planning of it. As far as pictures go, I've been looking for them for a few days, and I didn't ask Amber, but I called Heather because I hadn't talked to her for a few days anyway. And I said, Heather, do you have any pictures from our trip? She said, oh yeah, I made a scrapbook out of them. So apparently Heather has the pictures, unless Don or Amber or Guy have any, and I doubt they do. Do you, Amber?
I mean, I have some, not from you, ones that I had taken, but I mean, I sent them to Tim, but I was not a good photographer to begin with, but back then was really, really bad. So I have some really poor quality, but mostly just postcards and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I thought you would put some on digital, but I guess not.
Yeah, and I checked all over my computer. I couldn't find them, but so I don't know. Maybe another time I'll have to get some to Tim.
Okay. When Doug was talking about the Hill Cumorah pageant, I don't remember a lot about it. I remember that I thought it was cool and they had cool special effects, and someone told us that the guy that did the special effects for Star Wars did the special effects for the church for the Hill Cumorah pageant. I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember when we met all of the anti-Mormon people outside, that I remember Ruth and I ganging up on a guy to Bible bash with him. And I was 11, so I didn't know anything except for articles of faith, and I started spouting them off to this guy, and I felt so proud of myself that I was outwitting him. So I'd say, oh, so I guess you don't believe the 8th article of faith, then do you? He's like, I don't know, what's that? And I'd say it for him. It's like, yeah, you're right, I don't. I was pretty proud of myself. Thought I was beating them at their game. I'm sure Ruth was sparing her testimony, but I was trying to share all of my articles of faith.
I'm pretty proud of you too.
Ruth, do you remember that?
Do you believe in we believe? You have to start from the beginning every time.
Yeah.
I remember that a little bit. I remember being surprised at first, like, why are people here trying to dissuade people from coming in and watching the pageant? And I don't remember a lot of the details. I do remember Nicole talking. There was somebody we were talking with that was very respectful, and he was also taking notes. Oh. And later I wondered if that was so he would have a better argument next time, or be able to have something to back up what we were saying. The only the only thing I really remember him bringing up, and it might have been Nicole who answered to this, was, well, how did the church get started without the priesthood? Why did the priesthood, or something, why was the Book of Mormon before the priesthood or something like that? Anyway, but yeah, I wondered why they were so bent on trying to get people to not just come in and enjoy the pageant.
I remember Heather taking a bunch of their literature and brochures and walking across the street and emphatically, so they could all see her, chuck them into the trash can that the church had set up for their stuff.
Who else wants to speak up?
What about you, Willis?
So I was going to hitchhike and backpack through Europe that summer, I thought. And then Mom told me of her grand plan, so I changed my plans. So I decided to hike some of the Appalachian Trail. And so I was going to leave Provo and hitchhike to New York and meet you guys. And lo and behold, because there was no internet, I called the Grateful Dead hotline and found out they were going the same direction. So I took a bus from Provo to North Carolina, where I was going to hitchhike from there to New York and see the Grateful Dead a couple of times. And I got to Denver, and when they switched the bus, they lost all my stuff. And I finally, 2 weeks later, was able to reclaim my belongings in Grand Central Station in New York. But so I had the clothes on my back for 2 weeks. And I almost came home. If they wouldn't have found my backpack, I was going to go home the next day. So I had all my stuff, my sleeping bag, my tent, like everything I needed for the Appalachian Trail. And I can't remember now. Does anybody remember what day we met in Palmyra? Anyway, so I served my mission in New Jersey. So once I got to New York and spent some time on the Appalachian Trail, I got sick. I got sinus infection and ended up in an ER. And then I called an investigator from my mission. And then I just visited some people and kind of traveled around until I met you guys in Palmyra. And I did take a bus from somewhere in New Jersey to Palmyra. And I met up with you, I don't know, an hour or two before the pageant. Or you guys had just got there to the pageant, so probably 30 minutes before the pageant, I don't know.
Wow.
So we went to Nauvoo and all that stuff without you, right, Willis?
No, we did that on the way back, but I didn't go to Kirtland.
Okay.
I have like the itinerary printed out from our doc matrix. But so we got to Palmyra on Friday the 12th.
Oh, July?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we left on that Monday.
Hey, let's go.
So I probably left here in June 12th or 10th or something.
So did you get to do any hiking, and did you get to see any Grateful Dead concerts?
Yeah, I saw 5 Grateful Dead concerts, and I did hike on the Appalachian Trail. That's when I got sick.
You're talking about a trip that went back to church history sites.
Amber, you should tell us the itinerary, just like the major stops.
Yeah. So we started out Monday, and then we went to Nebraska, obviously. Then we went to Council Bluffs, Iowa the next day. And then on Wednesday, we went to like Lake Michigan. We stayed in Indiana, but we were in that area. And I think, Mom, you met up with one of our cousins that's in your
Well,
tribe.
one of our genealogy cousins, no, she wasn't from Indian bunch, but yes, she came and saw us there at the campsite.
Yeah, and then the next day we went to Kirtland, which was Thursday. Then Friday we drove to Palmyra, stayed there through Sunday, and then Sunday we drove to we did church at Palmyra, it says. I don't remember going to church, but we stayed there. And then we went to DC on Monday.
Some of you went to DC. I
Yeah.
know Doug and I don't know who else stayed at the campsite there by Palmyra. Dawn, did you stay there? Dawn didn't go to DC. I don't know if anybody else stayed with us at the campsite.
All right, let's stop and talk about DC for a minute then, should we?
Yeah.
Let's not forget, I'd like to hear people's impression of the Sacred Grove. That was one of the two most special places of the trip for me.
Okay.
You go ahead then, Willis, and tell us about that.
I just remember being there forever. I was able to, I don't know how many acres the church owns, but I remember just being there by myself and walking off. It felt like I just spent hours just kind of walking around and spending time on my own. And it just was the most peaceful place I'd been to.
Yeah, I think we had a guide, right, that kind of gave us a little tour and talked to us and then let us have our own time to ourselves to wander around. Does that sound right?
I remember, I thought it was like on a Sunday, but I think it's probably good that you weren't by me, Willis, because I remember a few of us running around like crazy, touching stuff and be like, oh, this is the tree, like totally not being reverent. And then I think Riz was like, oh, maybe we should calm down and actually take this seriously. So I think we were all just a little crazy at first for getting out of the car or whatever we were doing, but I thought it was a pretty cool experience after that, after we settled down.
I remember going in some little corner by myself with just me and trees and praying and trying so hard to have a vision. And it didn't happen. I was a little deflated.
We also, go ahead.
I just wanted you to speak.
Oh, we also went to Niagara Falls. So I don't know if that was everyone, because I know we split up with you guys, the Naps, to go to Jersey, but we went to Niagara Falls before heading to DC.
I thought everyone went there.
I thought they did too, and then that's on the way to DC. That's where people split up too.
I think so.
One of the very few souvenirs of the whole trip, I got a Niagara Falls pen.
You still have it?
My other souvenir was we got one outfit we could buy when we were in DC, and I got Georgetown Hoya's shorts and shirt with a bulldog, because I thought the bulldog looked cool.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Shoot, this thing doesn't work right.
Yeah, I remember getting, like, Dawn got like a t-shirt short, like, guess, like from the street vendors that was less licensed than it should have been. And like, I remember how cool, like, my t-shirt and shorts combo, like sweat material, were from the street vendor. And going on the subway for the first time, that was cool. And my mom picking a
Tick.
tick out of Nicole's hair on the White House lawn across the street because she found one in her head.
Washington DC, I guess.
I remember running up past behind Dawn right when we got out of the subway, and I grabbed Dawn's purse and ran so she'd think that she was getting mugged in New York City to try to scare her.
Yeah, like Don, when you said you didn't go to DC, that's not true because you did. But so, I mean, I didn't hear what she said, but
She remembers going on the subway.
yeah, I mean, I have a picture of her with us in front of the White House, so she went. But
Oh, well, to DC, apparently, I went. I remember taking a picture of you guys in front of the White House.
yeah,
So
Did we go into DC more than one day?
But I'm wondering, because I remember spending, like, it seemed a whole day in the Smithsonian, and I remember getting a tour of the White House, and I don't think we could have packed all that into one day.
well, the White House tour, I have a ticket and it was at 8:30, so it was like the first thing we did, and then I thought we went to the Smithsonian afterwards and like walked the mall like from like one end to the other to do that. But I thought we just had time for one. We just went to the Smithsonian, like just the one. I don't.
We split, and some people went to the White House and some didn't.
some people went to
Yes,
the
the
Capitol.
White House tickets were limited. And so
Okay.
the rest of us went to the Capitol instead.
Okay.
I'm
So
pretty sure that those that went to the Capitol had the better experience, because I remember thinking that our tour of the White House was pretty lame.
mm,
Yep, that's what I remember.
Well, I loved it, so maybe you guys were the lame ones, I guess.
You're a poli-sci nerd.
so I remember a very inspirational experience that happened at the Washington Memorial that if someone hasn't talked about in church, in a church talk yet at this point in their lives, someone needs to, about the power of prayer. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Does it involve something about Ruth?
Yeah. Ruth lost her retainer on the massive lawn of the Washington Memorial. We looked for it, and finally, can't remember if Audrey suggested we pray about it, or if we all, or if Ruth did, or someone, but some of us said a prayer, and then Ruth found her retainer. Maybe you can correct me on details, Ruth.
I agree, and I was thinking, I don't know if we split up, but I remember going to Niagara Falls and being in DC, and I thought Audrey was there to help me find my retainer.
I think maybe
So-
Audrey found it.
It could have been, but I don't know if she did. Maybe she was the one that had us pray together, but of all that big fat lawn and everywhere we looked, it was not long after the prayer that I walked right back up the hill, and there it was where we had eaten.
Yeah, when Audrey said she didn't go to Washington DC, I thought, I can't believe that, because I don't think the rest of us would have known how to even get around if we hadn't had Audrey telling us how to do it.
I didn't go to New York.
Oh,
I went to Washington DC.
oh, to New York? Oh, you didn't go to New Jersey with us.
New Jersey,
Okay, okay, okay. All right.
but
Well-
I thought you went to New York too to see the sites there, didn't you?
I don't know.
No,
We
didn't.
saw 'em
didn't
from
have
Jersey.
time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
From New Jersey, off in the distance, we could see the Statue of Liberty and the Twin Towers
Okay.
before the airplanes ran into them.
Nab's talking about going and putting your feet in the ocean. And I was so jealous because I'd never done that in the Atlantic. I thought that was pretty cool.
And we went to Wildwood in New Jersey, spent an afternoon in the ocean, and we drove the van onto a ferry, went from New Jersey to Delaware across the bay.
And we went to White Castle, huh, Wilga?
Yeah. With
We actually got to eat out.
Green Polovich.
I remember thinking it was like the fanciest hamburgers ever, and then when I grew up, people would tell me that White Castle is like lower than McDonald's on quality.
So before you get too far from DC, does anybody have any specific memories about any of those museums? I just remember we walked and walked forever, and then it seems like my mom and maybe Tim and me fell asleep. We went and took a nap in the Air and Space Museum, because that's one thing I inherited from my mom, is I could sleep anywhere.
And we were so tired, so tired.
Yeah, even at 11 years old, I remember feeling a little sheepish, like we were going to look like homeless people sleeping in the corner, but we were all tired and we did it. Probably because the Smithsonian was boring.
Did anyone
Was,
climb up on the limb and measure its door to see if a spacesuit could fit through?
No,
It
We
was
had-
so hot that
I remember
the only
seeing
place
space-
for relief was inside.
Yeah, it was super humid, sticky.
The thing that stuck out the most for me in Washington, D.C. were the buskers singing their songs and getting money. And I was thinking that would be a pretty good way to earn a living.
I think I also remember, just being there and in the subway and those music people. That was the first time I'd seen so many people who did not have white skin. It was such a different color scheme for me.
My favorite part of DC was the art museum.
the what?
Art museum. They had a
Oh,
full Picasso exhibit.
Yeah, a lot of new experiences for a lot of us kids, huh? I remember going we got to stop at a McDonald's once and I was so excited, and we went in and ordered, and I asked the worker for fry sauce and they looked at me weird and said, "You mean ketchup?" And I found out that the whole world didn't know what fry sauce was like I thought.
New experiences. You remember we figured out at the gas stations we got a refill. It was only like 25 cents or something. We all had to get some mugs.
Joseph Knapp, what are your memories?
I don't think you have that much time left.
So we need to schedule a different time and to feature you alone?
No, I don't know. There's a couple of ancillary ones. We did not use the air conditioning on that van of Kim's almost the whole trip. And the van was getting 22 to 25 miles to the gallon. And when you got home and told Marcy that you didn't use the air conditioning to save gas, she was in as much shock as she was watching John's boys run around that field with their hard hats on. She could not believe you drove to the East Coast and back and didn't run the air conditioner to save a few pennies. That was so hard on her. I remember how cool I thought Doug and Audrey's tent trailer was. Anywhere we parked, they could flip a few switches and pull the crank and it would open up. Boy, I thought that was awesome. I thought the campgrounds that we stayed at were very, very, very good. The park we stayed at where she met her long lost cousin, Heather met a park ranger. I wasn't sure Heather was going to come with us after that. I remember that Brandon spent the entire church history trip on the top of the luggage in the back of that van. He would lay across the very top and spend the whole trip backed up there, all piled on that. And then for me personally, I already had a really strong testimony of the gospel and the restoration, and a very, very deep interest in church history. I took hundreds of slides, and I bought slides when I could, and I made a slideshow out of all that stuff. But like Willis, to walk through the sacred grove and walk through Nauvoo, walk through Kirtland and the Newell K. Whitney store and the Kirtland Temple. Even now, thinking about it brings up such deep emotional feelings for me. I can't imagine not having been on that trip. The camaraderie and the love that I felt for everybody there, and what it did for me personally. But I think probably the impact most happened for me 5 or 6 years later when Brandon Andrus told me his version of the trip. So Brandon probably should tell us what happened to him.
I don't remember what I told you, Joseph, so maybe you can tell it and then refresh my memory.
About making the decision to change your life.
Well, I had to make a decision at some point. I don't remember if that was the exact moment or when it was, but I can say that for me, the Sacred Grove was a different experience. And a lot of it was that at that point in my life, I didn't have the testimony of anything. So being able to see all these different places and like Joseph said, the emotional feelings that you have now, it's still there. So that was I would say the seedlings of my own testimony. And then the second trip we went on, that all of that was cemented even further. And those are a lot of those experiences are what I built on to make the decision to change my life and to get going in the way that I needed to go.
Thank you, Brandon.
I'll tell you, in my notes, I made some notes of things to share today in this call, and the last note I have that was probably one of the things that stand out to me the most was I had this realization of the most charismatic person I think that I had ever met, who just seemed to have the whole world in his hand and could get anything he want, was my cousin BT, who was just 1 year older than me. He's this little 12-year-old kid, and he had more charisma than anyone I had ever met. And that's when I really got to know him, I think. And he was hanging out with Guy and Jess, and like he fit in with all the older kids, and I didn't. I just hung out with Anjanette and listened to MC Hammer. But BT was hilarious. I don't know if you guys remember. He would have everyone just cracking up. He was always joking and laughing, and he'd sing North to Alaska. The Rush is on, sit on Dawn, and he'd do some little dance and sit on Dawn's lap and freak her out. But
Didn't it turn into Slap Dawn?
probably, but yeah, the way he somehow figured out how he got to sleep on the back of the luggage, and we're all sitting uncomfortably, and he's just laying down the whole time, just relaxed. And I was very envious of BT. He seemed like the world was his oyster.
I think for a lot of us, it was the chance that we really got to know BT. For me, I mean, I remember him as a little kid when I was, small. I remember we were watching a movie once, all piled into the trailer, and there was some portion in the movie where it had subtitles, and Snubs settled everyone down for BT to read it all to us because he could read so fast. He was such a good reader, and we all could read with crap. And so, except for that memory, I don't really have memories of Brandon until that trip, and he was money. Makes me think, I don't know if it's an Andrus thing or a Cool Snub thing, that just to, yeah, you're going across country in a van, you got one spare seat, you're gonna pile in an Anjanette or a BT and just, we can squeeze one more. Well, we don't got room. Well, there's room on luggage. Come on. Pretty amazing.
Brandon and Jess, I bet you should tell us about your dance.
Let me tell you this. Can you hear me a sec?
Yeah.
When I went to Brandon Andrus's mission farewell, his dad was there, his mom was there, Ken and Colleen were there, and everybody, it was a great weekend. And Brandon said to me, "Do you remember the church history trip?" And I said, "Yes." And I can't remember where we were, but we were there, and Brandon told me this, which I did not know. But he said, we were on that trip, we were somewhere, and he said, Joseph you leaned over to me and you said, "Well, Brandon, are you going on a mission?" And Brandon said, "I don't know." And I didn't remember that, but Brandon told me that trip was the day of decision when he had to start to decide what he wanted to be. So I didn't know that till years later at his mission farewell, but the memory I have is that trip made the decision whether he was gonna choose God or choose skating.
I sure remember how powerful his farewell was.
How powerful what was?
His farewell.
Oh,
Okay, Amber, so on your itinerary, we
Oh,
did Niagara Falls, we did
DC.
DC, and then
Then we headed over to, halfway there, we stayed in Indiana and then we made it to Nauvoo.
and so we did Nauvoo and then Carthage and came home. Are those like
No, then we went to Adamandiaman, don't forget Eddie. And then, and then we went,
Independence.
yeah, Independence, and then,
Oh yeah.
and then home.
Okay, so I guess we should have Jess and BT and Guy talk about Nauvoo, huh?
Yeah.
I want to hear Guyman's perspective.
Because I'm sure he's still sad that he didn't get to go to the dance, but BT did.
Yeah.
Because it was for 14 and up, and so Brandon snuck in, but my mom would
Audrey
not.
put the lockdown.
Mhm.
is Guy on with us?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
All right, Jess, let's talk about your girlfriend.
Well, I remember when we were going around Nauvoo, they had all the little town and shops and stuff. And I guess this was the type of situation where we got left to do what we wanted to do. Like, I don't think we had to stay with our parents or adults, right? So we went through some blacksmith thing and they made a ring for us and we palled around. I remember BT and Guy, us three going around, and maybe others. I don't remember, but I remember there was some sort of wagon ride. We got on some wagon ride with some teenage girls. So we started hanging out with these girls, and enough had happened about the RLDS church, just in the stories and this and that in the RLDS, that I didn't have any perception of other religions hardly, but it seemed like the RLDS church was just trying to be the LDS church, but crappier. So, you know, like I didn't think that the Catholic Church was crappy or anything else, but because there was this comparison that the RLDS church was trying to be the LDS church, but they were not doing a good job, that they just seemed crappy. So we're going on the ride with these teenage girls, and I declare, who in the heck would be a member of the RLDS church? That is the crappiest church. And one of these girls is like, oh, I am an RLDS. I'm here with my grandma. Like, crud.
No,
In your
no,
world.
that is not how it happened.
What do you mean that's not how it happened?
You were walking down the road with her, sidling up to her, and you might have been holding hands by then. And you walked past the RLDS thing, and you go, the RLDS, they are the crappiest church. That's so crap. And then you said, what church do you go to?
Oh
And
yeah,
then
I just asked her.
she goes,
I thought
the RLDS.
I thought I said that on a wagon ride. I don't know.
I thought you guys were walking by it.
But you asked her, they're the crappiest church. So what church do you go to?
Yeah, you're right. Right as soon as I uttered that, I asked her, and luckily I was too dumb to feel very dumb about it.
And in your whole life, you didn't know one person that didn't go to our church up to that point. So it's like pretty safe in your paradigm to rip
Yeah.
on another church.
But the lucky for you, you were pen pals with her for a year or two.
Yeah. She's still interested enough to write me some letters, apparently.
She sent you a picture. She was cute.
So you guys found a nice little spot secluded under a tree somewhere, or what?
So then later there was some sort of dance right at the church that Guy didn't get to go to. So we showed up, danced around. We invited those girls to show up, so they did. So we're hanging out. Then next thing you know, we slither outside, start making out.
Do you remember, Jess, was it that same day or the next day that we actually went to her grandma's house?
I don't remember, but I remember her grandma lived kind of just down the lane from the Joe Smith store or something, didn't she? I don't know.
Yeah, she lived right there in Nauvoo somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember we went to their house, and that was a little awkward.
I don't even remember that part. Dang. So what else did I miss, BT?
I don't remember all of it, but I think somewhere along the way there was like you remember like chalk line of like a person on the ground, and I went and laid down in it and pretended that it was me, or we made a chalk line of me outside. You remember doing anything like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Let's see. So the thing I remember about Guy in the dance is that you had to be 14 and his birthday was a couple of months away, and Audrey wouldn't let him go and said, well, Brandon gets to go and he's only 12. And Audrey in her wisdom said, I'm not Brandon's mother, am I? But you're my son, so that's why you're not going.
All right, what else about Nauvoo? I remember that I remember the blacksmith was cool. We got little rings made out of nails, and
And we had to go a couple times because they made the horseshoe, while they were explaining it, and whoever's birthday was the closest got the horseshoe. And so that was me, but then Brandon's had just passed, so we had to go back so he could get it the next time. So we could both get it, but I still have that horseshoe.
And I remember feeling hosed because no matter how many times we went, I wouldn't have the closest birthday.
And I went multiple times and have multiple, so. But I remember, Kathy, I don't know if you were there, but we met some boys too, and Nicole took the van and we drove to a campground and to like see if we could find them. I don't even remember why or who they were, but when we came back, I remember, Louise, you were like, why would you do that? And it was like the first time I'd ever seen you disappointed, and you couldn't believe that we would just take off in the van like that. And I still feel guilty. I don't even know who they were. I was just along for the ride.
Oh my gosh. What I remember is we were staying at the Nauvoo house and we were walking down the road and there was a bunch of boys or something. So
they were Boy Scouts, like literally Boy Scouts.
Yeah. And Nicole's like, what town are you guys from? Town? We're not from a town. We're from Salt Lake City. And so I immediately thought they were pretty rude, but I don't remember going in the van to see them.
Yeah, it was like the campground down the road, but I don't think we saw them. I don't remember. I just remember Louise was not impressed with our.
I didn't know you guys were dragging Maine and Nauvoo. Dang.
Yeah, because Nicole's like, well, it's my van. We can take it. And so I don't think there was any asking happening. So I think that was
you know why I think she was mad?
Why?
I think Nicole had an Idaho license and was 15 and should not have been driving.
That makes
Well,
sense.
yeah, and I didn't think she was mad. I just thought she was disappointed in our choices, and I couldn't believe Louise was disappointed in us.
Now, we also, Audrey had arranged for us to go to a swimming pool just down the road, right? Didn't you guys go swimming every day?
Well, we stayed in a KOA near Nauvoo that had a pool before we stayed in the Nauvoo house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think we were allowed to go back there.
Kim didn't fit in with the older kids. What did you do, Wilga?
You
With
know,
all the adolescent love kids.
You know, I loved Nauvoo, and I spent probably most of the time just by myself, wandering around and seeing things. I was sure grateful the RLDS church owned the Nauvoo house so we could stay in it.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm
that
thinking,
was
well, if we
really
owned it, they wouldn't let us stay here. And I went on a tour once, an RLDS tour. There was a bunch of people, but I was the only one from our group. And the tour guide asked, is anybody a Mormon here? I raised my hand and he got so excited, and the whole tour, he gave it to me. As we go everywhere we'd go, like we went to the red brick store and we were upstairs. He said, okay, now you'll really love this because this is where your Relief Society was started. And this is where you guys first did endowments. And he was so excited that somebody would care about all the history of the things they owned. And it was so strange to me that they didn't seem to matter to him or them.
I remember being on a tour with the RALDS guide and being in the top floor of the red brick store and looking out at the temple site. And the guy said, well, we know that Joseph Smith had a temple, but we don't see anything about that in the New Testament, so we don't pay any attention to it. That could have been the second tour the second time we went on trip, but one of the guides said that I heard him say. Oh,
So for posterity, will someone describe the Nauvoo house?
I will, but before I do that, I'll tell you that on one of the tours that I was in, there was hardly anybody on the tour, and we were in the mansion house. And the tour guide was RLDS, and he said, you want to see where Joseph Smith had the mummies? I said, yes. And I don't know if anybody else was with me, but he took me upstairs and said, see that wall right there? That's a false wall. And he had the mummies stored back in there. And oh, I was thrilled that I got to see where he had the mummies. But since then, I've been told that that was totally bogus. And he never did have the mummies in the mansion house. Okay, so the Nauvoo house was one of the buildings most close to the river, and it was huge. And on the bottom floor was a commercial kitchen, had huge stoves and big pans and pots, and then a ballroom that had a great big long banquet table. And then the floor up from that had, if I remember right, had bedrooms. And then the top floor was a great big floor that just had bed after bed after bed. So they used that for big groups to come and rent and stay there. Anything else about it? I remember I loved it. I loved the Nauvoo house and sitting there in the ballroom and looking out at the river.
It was the biggest house I had ever seen, and it wasn't just bed after bed. It was bunk bed after bunk bed. And I remember having my mind blown, and me and Kathy and Amber, whoever, would go around and count how many bunk beds were in the whole entire place, and I feel like it was 30 or more.
So what I remember about that is they showed us a drawing of what it was supposed to be, and it was going to be a massive brick hotel. And Joseph Smith was murdered before it was very high off the ground, and they dug up the basement and hid Joseph and Hiram's bodies in the basement for several days till the mobs went. And when they had the actual funeral procession, it was coffins filled with rocks, and the real bodies were in the basement of that Nauvoo house. Then after the Saints went west, Emma Smith married Louis Bideman, and Louis Bideman took the long walls where the original hotel was gonna be, and he took those bricks apart and built that house tall instead of long. So the Nauvoo house today was about a quarter of the size that the hotel was going to be, but Emma Smith and Louis Bideman would take boarders for money. So when we were staying there, for me, I remember thinking this is where Emma Smith lived and spent her last years of her life here. And the front door where Mom was looking out looked right out at Joseph Smith's original homestead there, where the graves of Hiram and Joseph and Emma were.
Yeah, it was kind of a surreal thing for me.
Yeah. It was
seeing their grave sites.
Yeah.
I also remember the Mississippi River, which was right there. We were right on the shore of it. Was much, much larger than any river I had ever seen in the West.
Yeah, it was no Provo River. You're right.
Yeah, crossing that in the winter did not seem very fun. That's for sure.
And should we talk about the bugs?
Go ahead.
The pepper for the spaghetti.
Yeah, I remember Dawn having a reaction of not very much enthusiasm about the bugs that ended up in her food.
Yeah, there were so many gnats. It was crazy how bad they were because we were right on the river.
I remember some of the street signs, you couldn't read the words because there's so many bugs splattered against
Yeah.
the sign. I'd never seen bugs like that before. And then there was one point on our trip where I spent the whole night in the van. I don't know why, but that was my sleeping spot. And the next day I woke up with hundreds of mosquito bites. And I remember we all had our arms and legs were just covered. And I think Guy had the most.
It was when we were staying at the campground next to the Lake Michigan.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
remember that Kathy and I were in the tent trailer, so we didn't get the bugs.
Oh. I don't know if we forgot mosquito repellent or if I just never got sprayed, but it was a long, hot, miserable, itchy night. I remember that.
Well, I remember Louise or Audrey telling us if we took a bunch of vitamin B, they wouldn't bite us. And somebody only had pills that we could swallow, and I couldn't swallow a pill to save my life. And Amber laughed and laughed because she couldn't imagine someone who couldn't swallow a pill.
I still think of it to this day, Kathy, because I'm like, we've been taking 50,000 horse pills our whole life with all the healthness from my mom. So I was like, why can't you swallow 20 at a time? That's weird.
Yeah. But I think I've heard later that you have to take vitamin B daily for a month for that to actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we had some, but I think we had been swimming, maybe even showered that night, whatever. So I'm sure we just didn't have it when we had a campfire or something. Mosquitoes weren't out as bad. But yeah, Guy had it on his elbow, and like he had one shoe fall off. So it was like one complete foot that was like so bad, and then like really bad elbow, and like itchy mosquito bite foot is not good.
Did you get bites, Jitsu? Aren't you
No.
immune from them?
I didn't get any, but I don't even remember that. And if there were any bugs in my food, I ate them all.
We all ate the gnats at the Nauvoo house, and Louise and my Audrey, I don't remember which one were like, just pretend it's pepper. So it was like the most pepperest food in the entire world. But yeah, it was pretty strong.
One thing I remember about Nauvoo was going to the temple site, and they showed us where the temple used to be, which is kind of funny to think about now since there is a new temple rebuilt there. I haven't been back to the temple, but my memories of Nauvoo are this grass with a couple cornerstones where the temple used to be.
Some sort of moonstones and sunstones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went downtown Nauvoo, and there was a Latter-day Saint lady there who ran a little shop, and she was a member. And we went and saw her, and she said President Benson, who was the prophet at the time, had been there on a visit. And she said, President Benson said, there will be a living, operating temple in Nauvoo again. There will be. And the Nauvoo Saints were so excited. And I thought, oh my gosh, that will be amazing in the millennium when they rebuild that temple. When President Hinckley announced it, I could not even believe it.
Were you going to say something, Willis?
But the highlight for that area for me was Carthage Jail. Next to the Sacred Grove, that was the most remarkable place for me as far as just the spirit that I felt and the feeling that was there. And I wept most of the time I was in Carthage.
I feel the same way about Carthage.
So then we drove to Adamondiaman to stay there for the night.
We stayed there for the night? Memory of that is Anjanette could not wait to get to Independence to see her friend that was on a mission. I thought we spent about 30 seconds there and then hit the road.
Oh, well, I thought we stayed there, but maybe I'm wrong.
Was that the next trip that we stayed there, Am?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I do know that Anjanette didn't want to spend 3 minutes there, boy. She was wanting to be gone.
Yeah.
I remember that I thought Adamondiaman was cool. I do remember Carthage. And we also went to Liberty Jail, didn't we?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yep. We went to Liberty Jail the next day, the Independence sites there.
Oh, okay.
I kind of have different times that I've gone to the sites merged together, so I don't know, but I thought it was Adamondiaman the first time we went there, that it was hard to find and it looked like a big field and overgrown and there wasn't anything to stay and see. And then maybe a missionary who didn't do tours or anything, but just kind of checked the grounds or the restroom, excuse me, because I think that there was only a sign there and maybe a little restroom. But I thought somebody eventually then told us where a Grand River had been or something, and we got to run out in the woods and through the grass, but I didn't remember staying very long or hearing stories or anything. And it was probably a later time that I went. We talked about how the gathering back and the great sacrament meeting and the passing the keys back to Christ would happen.
That would have been a later time. I don't think we stayed long enough for that.
Yeah, it must have been the other trip that we went and said hi to your friend, and maybe we
But
didn't stay
there were 2 missionaries there that were groundskeepers, and Doug tried to talk to him a little bit. They told him that they were called there on a mission and that their mission was to keep the grounds sacred and ready, and that they were not to proselyte on the property. Don't engage anybody in proselyting. Don't get in any discussions. Their mission was to keep the grounds beautified.
Okay, should we talk about Independence now? Talk about the temple that looks like a seashell.
I don't think it was there our first trip, right? It wasn't there till our second trip.
They were building it.
Yeah, so
They
it
were
was
building it
halfway.
there.
Yeah.
One other thing on Adamondiaman. I know people that claim that big, huge events happened there in 2017 during the solar eclipse. Don't know if it's true or not, but just thought I'd mention it.
Maybe Sasquatch was there.
Could have been.
Read Wendy Nilsson's talk from January 2018, and that's pretty amazing. I didn't hear it till recently, talking about how the Savior has come to gatherings, and CNN didn't know about it, but it sure makes me believe that something big probably could have happened at Adamondiaman.
Maybe someday we can have a Zoom call dedicated to Sean's theories, conspiracy theories, and schedule in a 24-hour all-nighter.
They'd be deleted from YouTube.
Okay, let's talk about Independence. Who has memories they want to talk about independence?
It was really cool for me. They had a big tabernacle there that we sat in, and that was kind of the RLDS headquarters. And they were just building their temple, and but having the woman leaders of their church was an odd thing to see, the portraits on their walls. And when they ran out of sons to hand it to, they gave it to their daughters. And that's just what stands out to me.
I thought it was interesting that when we went through Nauvoo, the RLDS church owned some stuff, but it seemed like our church was kind of like the main player there. And then when we got to Independence, I was surprised that our church didn't have a lot of stuff there. They just had that one little plot of land where there was a little plaque in the corner of some grass field that said, "This is where a temple will be someday." But our church didn't have a lot of real estate there, it seemed like, compared to some of the other churches around there.
Well, they had a good visitor center, right?
Tim's got it mixed up just a little bit. The far west temple site was the one that just had cornerstones and nothing else out in the boonies. But Independence, there was a really big visitor center. But you're right, Willis is right. It was the RLDS's church's headquarters, and they had church office buildings. They had a tabernacle with a round dome on it. Inside of it was pretty similar to the Salt Lake Tabernacle. Their stuff was big. We had a visitor center there.
So
I'll tell you something.
How far is Far West from Independence?
Oh, several hours.
Far West is about 45 minutes from Adirondack,
Yeah.
and then you go on farther to get to Independence.
But I do want to say this, even though it doesn't relate to this specific trip. When Jim and I were in Independence talking about it, we'd seen the Far West site, we'd seen the Kirtland Temple, we'd seen the Nauvoo Temple site, and we wanted to see the big temple in Zion. So we went to the Church of the Temple lot and saw the big cornerstone that had been laid, and they showed us the size of the temple, and it looks smaller than Kirtland. And Jim said, "But this doesn't make sense. This doesn't even make sense. This is supposed to be the grand temple, big temple, and it's this little tiny hole in the ground. This doesn't even add up." So when we went to the visitor center, Jim asked one of the sister missionaries about it. And she said, "Do you have a few minutes?" And of course, you know, Jim, we got all day. So she took us down to the basement and showed us a map of Independence, Missouri. And she showed us what the Temple Lot Church owned. And it was that lot where the cornerstone was, and another lot where their church and bookstore is. And then she showed us where the RLDS church owned. It was quite a bit of acreage. And then she showed us where the Zion Temple complex is supposed to be. And it's 24 buildings that interlock. And she said, "We already own most of that." And she said, "The factory behind where we are, we own it, and we lease the factory out to that company. We own this and this and that. We already own 60 acres of that." And when we left there, she showed us on the map that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints already owned 70 or 80% of what it's going to be.
Well, I guess for me, it just didn't seem like our church owned very much then compared to RLDS.
Well, I think, yeah, just coming from Nauvoo and having so much.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim, because we went in the visitor center and then the other two big sections at that intersection were RLDS and then Church of Christ or whatever maybe Joseph's saying on the other one. And at that other lot by that other church, there was one lone marker that talked about Joseph Smith dedicating that space for a temple. Maybe that's what you're remembering, Tim.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
As a missionary in New Jersey, I baptized a newly converted RLDS. We started teaching her and she believed the Book of Mormon, but didn't feel like something was missing. And when she learned about the priesthood actually still, or whatever, us having the priesthood made a difference to her and she got baptized.
All right, you guys want to see some photos that Amber sent me?
Yep.
Like I said, not good.
Okay.
Hyman. Oh man.
And I think we're all wearing our Ogallala hats in this because I for sure didn't ever wear that white hat other than.
Yeah. Good timing on the photo there, Amber. Guy chugging his bowl.
Yeah.
Chevy dealership.
Okay. Next one. Eating on the camper.
And this one, I realized last night that Ruth's name is in it. She's the one right next to me, but
Where was that from? Is that the Kirtland Temple?
yeah.
I hear that the Kirtland Temple says Church of the Latter-day Saints. Does anyone concur up on the building?
I don't remember, but I think they've done updates since we've been there multiple times. So I don't know if it'd be the same from this trip or not.
There's Dawn and the King. There's the White House, huh?
Yeah.
Looks like some people wearing their maybe their new clothes they got to buy in DC.
Can you make the images within the screen a little bit larger or no?
I can, but the quality goes away.
Yeah, it's just like me taking a picture of it wasn't even like 35 millimeters, like that 110 whatever camera. So it's really.
It still helps a little bit if you can zoom in here and there.
There's Ruth doing some cocky gangster pose, probably where I got it from.
Right.
So instead of big dog, were you called wet mouse?
Everyone talks about me and Jess being cocky little kids. It's probably Ruth that did it to us.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Hey, when you guys were doing kind of that gangster whatever, wasn't that the trip where Louise started to be calling? Didn't you guys and BT start calling her cool snubs and have her do her movements and her cool?
That was a Christmas trip to St. George to see Kim and Marcy.
Oh.
I've heard that it's a great thing when you have someone buried in sand like that, like Tim is right there. to get out a bag of Wonder Bread, sprinkle it all around and run. Watch the seagulls come in for a heyday.
I just want to point out my mother's sweet pose behind me. All right, what else? So Don and Nicole and Amber,
Yeah.
they're constructing the RLDS Seashell Temple.
Was it windy or are they just hair like
We're
that?
just Beyonce.
And then Amber sent me the trip budget.
The food for $400.
That's how quality it was.
One can of peanut butter, that did it for all of us, huh?
Because we had the bologna too, I think. So we were good, or whatever kind of meat.
Well,
Hope
if
they're all
that was
loaves
an
of bread.
it was an $8 can of peanut butter, so it must have been like a gallon.
It was one of those huge ones that like you get for food storage. It wasn't like a regular.
Went through 2 pounds of margarine.
It was so gross. $50 to eat out, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
For 35 people.
Yeah, I can't do that. I can't hardly go on a trip now just myself for that cost.
Yeah, it was quite the budget, that's for sure. Like for the lodging for that whole time, $420. That's crazy for one family. And then Louise, you guys had $434. That's pretty good budgeting there, Mom.
Crazy
Well-
to think we're almost at the 30th anniversary of that trip.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow, yeah, this summer, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's plan another trip.
I was like, so does that mean we need to do it?
Willis, do you know if the Palmyra pageant is gonna happen this summer?
They already canceled it. They
Hmm.
announced last week or the week before.
I thought they were done for good, forever.
They were
They
gonna
had one
do
last
last
one.
summer's was gonna be the last one, and then COVID.
Oh,
So they postponed it, and Joseph was supposed to find us a charter bus so we could go do it again.
So do you
Well-
think they will do it next summer, or is it just done?
They said they're not doing it ever again.
And so is there no pageants ever again?
They're
Nothing's
doing
supposed to be next year.
Nauvoo stuff. And Mom, we can't hear you.
Okay.
now we can.
Nauvoo is supposed to have a pageant next year.
As in this summer?
No, 2022.
Oh.
I think you guys could all put on your own pageant. A fleet of horse trailers heading back east, full of all the next generation. Get them all in costumes and do a reenactment.
You
I
can be the
didn't,
director, Sean.
I probably didn't appreciate when I was 11 years old what that took to plan that trip. So now I'll tell you, Doug and Audrey and Louise, thanks for planning that and taking us on that trip. That was probably a lot of work and effort and planning, but I'm very grateful that you did.
No,
You're welcome.
Yep,
I
you're welcome.
agree.
I want to add something here. All of you have expressed some fond memories of your time there in Nauvoo. I want you to be very envious of Audrey and I, who spent a full mission there. And then when we got home, the mission presidency called and asked us to come back for another summer. So we feel pretty blessed and rewarded for not just this trip, but the time we spent on our mission there.
Awesome.
I was last there in 2013 and I was talking to him and I said, well, there's going to be a day when you can't find Teamsters, isn't there? And they were still optimistic, but they said if some people had their way, they thought it was too much work and danger and that they were going to start having tractors pull the carts. But I hope that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think anybody that gets to spend time in Nauvoo is quite fortunate because it definitely has some spirit of the saints very strong there. So I'm glad that you went on your mission there and that we got to go a couple times with family stuff so I could get to experience it multiple times because I definitely saw and felt different things every time. So I think it's a really sacred place.
I do too.
Yeah. I also think it's really great that at the Lands and Records Office, you can see maps and you can look up where different people lived. You know, you can find where Adolphia Young's farm was and out behind the visitor center. I think probably one of the places Doug would take people on rides back there. You go through the Duke property, and I think that is one of the special things too. Yeah, with the whole trip, I don't know that I had any huge aha moments, but the whole spirit of it, and I'm grateful that Mom, Doug, and Audrey, I echo the gratitude of everybody else that you followed the promptings and went through all that it took to make that happen. I don't have a lot of really clear memories, but being in the Kirtland Temple was really neat, and going in and out of all of those shops in Nauvoo and thinking about the pioneers coming and making their way and changing that swamp into a place where they could live. And at Council Bluffs, all of the suffering and different things that went on as they were driven out. I also agree with Willis. I felt like, and Joseph, I think Carthage was a highlight as well. So thanks. And I really am serious. If we all want to do it again sometime, I would love it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
One thing about that trip and about this call today, it is really good to hear that you who were on it appreciated it, because that was a rather stressful time for me, because I'd just been with my mother for over a week before we went. She had been in the hospital and was at home and was not doing well. On the trip, I was quite worried about her. The day we got home, or the day after, my brother called me to tell me I'd better come because she was in the hospital and not doing well. So my focus on the trip wasn't as good as it should have been. So I really appreciate all of you's good feelings about that. And even though my focus wasn't there all the time, it was good that some good things came about it. My mom died a couple weeks after the trip.
Oh.
To see the impact that trip had on so many of us is a testament to you guys for dragging us along.
Let's not forget that Audrey's truck CB radio handle was Genealogy.
I thought it was Prodigy Woman.
Oh yeah, probably.
That was my only internet experience at the time was Prodigy.
That was all of our internet experience at the time.
Yeah. Guy, that gal that I met at the Lake Michigan, Guy had a pen pal, her daughter. She didn't come that day to Lake Michigan, but he wrote to her for some time. So, and Brandon, is Brandon still with us or he's off? Oh, Brandon, you, I don't think you were on yet when I was telling them, I remember how good you were to help out with all the camp setup or cleanup and everybody else. I remember especially at St. Michigan, Lake Michigan, that you wondered why you were the only one that was helping. And everybody else all the other kids had scattered. So I appreciate that, Brandon, that wasn't the only time you were helpful though.
Audrey, was Prodigy something that was online or in the internet in 1991?
Well, Prodigy was online.
Didn't even know the internet was around till a decade after that.
Well, I don't know if you'd call it the internet, but it was somehow you could communicate with other people, and there were kind of little groups, and
Yeah, it was like,
what, Amber?
oh, it was like chat rooms. So you could,
Yeah.
before like AOL type chat rooms.
Wow, that's cool.
I do remember that we went to the lake. Did we go to Lake Michigan or Erie or both?
Michigan is the only one I remember.
I remember it looked as big as an ocean. I couldn't think of a lake where you couldn't see the other side.
Yeah, I was like, this is not a lake. Like the rivers and the lakes were a lot different than we were used to, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the waves were huge. It was so fun to play in. That was really cool.
All right, does anyone have anything else before I pause the recording?
Roy, I just wanted to say, Roy doesn't remember being to Nauvoo visiting Audrey and Doug. He doesn't remember hardly any of it, but we really enjoyed that. And, you know, riding on the wagon and singing and the oxen and the ring. We both got rings, you know, with the little horseshoe, but that was a great, I remember the Carthage, that was, the spirit there was overwhelming. That was quite an experience going there. I don't think I've ever been to any church site or anything and have that kind of spiritual experience as it was there. So
I know it was all wonderful, even though I don't remember it all.
it was great. And I remember they had like a day off and we went, where did we go, Audrey? Into the next state there and went to the Amish, was it the Amish quilt places?
Amish?
Yeah, and to Iowa, and there was a Mennonite store
Oh, that's what it was.
missionaries would go to.
Yeah,
And had lots of fabric that the missionaries would buy to make their dresses and the hats the guys would buy to wear.
we really appreciated you letting us stay with you and everything. It was great. Thank you.
Okay, anyone have anything else?
Been wonderful. Thanks for whoever planned this activity today and topic.
Amber just sent me one more.
You can't really see it.
Oh, you can't?
No.
A little.
Tim and Ruth and Nicole with King
Oh.
Benjamin. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just found 3 more pictures, but there weren't that much different than what Amber had that I hadn't come across. So There were Amber and Heather in the Kirtland store.
Oh, yeah, I remember that picture.
And one at Kirtland Temple, people eating, but you had that one.
Well, Doug and I think that maybe of everybody, I'm the one that loved the trip the most. Does anybody want to challenge me?
I
Maybe
still
Joe.
vote for you.
What?
I still vote for you.
Yeah, I'll let you have that title, but I think we all had a really awesome time.